I can't believe I'm gonna be saying this, but I'm redoing Roll of the Dice and Press Start. Hi, my name is Dawn Dalton. I am a freelance writer and an aspiring author, and this year I am working towards self-publishing my first novel, and I'm taking you along for the ride. So last week and the week before, I had a wicked case of writer's block, and I worked really hard to kind of get myself back out of it while not pushing myself to the point of burnout. And I realized part of my problem was I'm writing my books in the wrong order. And that is not something I wanted to think about when I have books 2 and 3 almost completed, or at least one of them mostly typed up and the other one mostly drafted. Luckily, book 1 is still book 1 and will always be book 1. And the events that trickle through the rest of the books all spawn out of book 1, and you meet some of the characters in book 1. And I've been writing what I thought was book 2, Roll of the Dice, and drafting book 3, Press Start, in the wrong order. Press Start should be book 2 and Roll of the Dice should be book 3. And now I have to rip them both apart, pull out the components that get to stay, because the base story still stays, but all of the background stuff that I had going on now needs to be flipped from one book to the other. And I didn't realize this until I was driving to my martial arts class, thinking about my story and why I'm feeling kind of stuck in both of my stories, and realizing that I need to flip the two. And so this week I am going to be going back through a little bit of Game On, basically just to figure out exactly what month it ends in, so that Press Start can start basically right afterwards, and then Roll of the Dice can happen after Press Start. And I think that this is actually the right course of action. It took me a while thinking about it, plotting on it, trying to decide if this is just me self-sabotaging or if this is actually going to help both books. And the conclusion I came to is that it's going to help both books. And it's going to give me additional things to play with, more tension to play with, and now I have to replot everything. So you're gonna come along for the ride. You're gonna kind of see the plotting process. Luckily, book 4 is still gonna be book 4. I finally settled on the main female lead's name because apparently the 2 times I worked on it, I gave her a different name each time, as well as the niece got 3 different names now. So I need to get that worked out, dealt with, and just get kind of everything replotted and figure out what I can stay, what needs just minor tweaks to go into their books, and what all I need to add. So let's get started. So my last timed event in Game On happens to be a Ren Fair day, and I think I'm going to make it opening day of Ren Fair just to give myself a little bit more time before the start of book 2. There's only a few chapters after this one, so I think because this would put it right at the beginning of July, that I'm going to be starting book 2 at the beginning of August, or somewhere in August. So. So now that I have when my book has to start, I have to go in and start figuring out what my timeline looks like for this book. I already know most of the events aren't going to change. It's just now I have to condense everything into a smaller timeline. I did this by going into Roll of the Dice and just opening up another scene and just sort of free wrote what the timeline would have to look like in order for me to be able to get everything accomplished that needs to get accomplished in this book in the timeline that I believe it should happen. Now, that being said, the timeline is now condensed. Originally, this book took place over more than a year, which is a little ridiculously long for a romance novel. And then it got condensed to a little under a year. And now it's condensed into about half a year, which tracks. So I went in and I started figuring out, okay, well, if that's the case, if they're meeting in August, by the second week in September, if they haven't gone to the water park, they're not going because obviously it gets closed early. So that scene might have to get cut, but I won't know until I really start digging into my plotting process if things land up where they need to. So after I'm done kind of free writing and trying to figure out, okay, well, if I'm starting here, I now have to make this character established in her career, and I'm gonna actually age her up a little bit from what I originally was planning on, which honestly feels better anyway, because Rebecca should be a little bit older than I had her in the original book. Originally, she was 18, 19, and all the characters in the book were like in their mid-20s. So I'm establishing her in her career at 21. She's already working as a ballerina, and I think that that works out a whole heck of a lot better and leads to a few more bits of tension in the book for a couple of different reasons that I'm not going to go into here. And once I figured all that out, and then I kind of figured out the timeline for Roll of the Dice, having it start pretty much right after Press Start finishes, I know that most of the scenes for Press Start are going to stay. I'm going to cut out a lot of the Academy stuff because obviously she's no longer in the Academy. I have to seed one of the plot threads like right away in the book so that it comes to fruition fairly quickly so that we can move into some of the tension. So once I have that all figured out, I then pull out my Writer Happy Planner and I open up to the section on romancing the beat so that I can look at, okay, in this section I need to have this, 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 and this. At the beginning of the book, I need to introduce Steve, I need to introduce Rebecca, I need to have them meet, and I need to have them have their adhesion, their plot thrust. And so what I do, you can see I'm starting in on Roll of the Dice as well, is I take a page out of my series Bible, and each page has one section of romancing the beat, and I write down literally everything that happens in that scene. And I do that for the setup section, the falling in love section, the retreat from love, and then the fighting for love. Those are the 4 parts of a romance novel, obviously. And once I have that all figured out, I will be going back in and typing up the novel and plotting out Roll of the Dice. Now, a lot of stuff is changing in Roll of the Dice just based on the time of year that it starts. And that's going to be a lot more work for me because I have to come up with a few other ideas. Now, roll of the dice when I had finished writing or typing it up did end up being a little over 40,000 words, which is a novella. It's not a full novel. So obviously there was a lot of missing stuff. And I think switching the timeline from fall to spring will actually lead to a lot more attention and a lot more fun for me putting them together and tearing them apart. So that's sort of what's going on right now. I have press start plotted out. I have a few extra scenes that I want to stick in because it'll just twist the knife a little bit more. I already know how I'm changing a bunch of the beginning stuff just to fit the timeline, and now it's just getting roll of the dice done and getting everything typed up and ready to go, and then I can work on book 4. Now, a lot of thought went into this process prior to me really sinking into what I was going to be doing with my novels. One of the things I really wanted to put a lot of thought into was, is this self-sabotage, or is this honestly what the series needs? Because I can tell you that if I had tried this 2 years ago, it probably would have just been self-sabotage. I don't think I'm worthy of actually having my books published. Now, it was just one of those things that had to go into, is this right? And I can tell you that when I was writing these books initially and sort of just following wherever my brain wanted to go, Press Start was the second book. And I pushed it off to be book 3 because these characters don't live in the house. They aren't part of the house that gaming built. They're auxiliary characters to the house that gaming built. But in canon, they needed to be the second book. And I've been trying to force them into a hole that they didn't belong in. And now I have to go back and rectify that. And I can't believe the amount of work I now have to do to get everything fixed. This may derail my original plan for the year of getting a book done every quarter, because it's just got to happen. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be going in and doing whatever beta reader feedback is done and into me and changing what needs to be changed in Game On. And moving forward with that process as well. And it's nerve-wracking, and I don't think originally I knew what I was getting myself into, but I just have to keep moving forward. So if you've been enjoying the struggle bus of me getting my novels written and published, be sure to feed the algorithm, boop that like button, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.